September of 1922, two bodies were found lying side by side in an apple orchard in New Jersey. They had been arranged, carefully, deliberately, as if someone wanted them to be seen that way. No one ever agreed on why. The victims were Edward Wheeler Hall, an Episcopal priest, and Eleanor Reinhardt Mills, a member of his church choir. They were not married to each other. Hall was married. Mills was also married. Their relationship, though not publicly confirmed at first, was widely understood to be intimate. Letters between them would later surface, personal, emotional, and difficult to ignore. By the time their bodies were discovered, the situation was already complicated, but it became something else entirely once the scene was examined. They were found in a crabapple orchard near New Brunswick, not far from where both lived. Their bodies were positioned close together. Eleanor Mills had been shot 3 times in the head. Edward Hall had been shot once. Around Mills's body, letters were scattered, correspondence believed to be between the two of them. Some were torn, some were placed in a way that suggested intention. And then there was the positioning. Her body appeared to have been arranged, her hand placed near her head, her clothing adjusted. It did not look like a sudden act of violence. It looked like something that had been staged. The case quickly drew attention, not just because of the murders, but because of who was involved. A priest, a married woman, a relationship that crossed social boundaries in a very public way. And almost immediately, the question became less about what happened and more about who had reason to care. On the night of September 14th, 1922, Hall and Mills are believed to have met in secret, as they had done before. Neither returned home. Their bodies were discovered the following day by a man walking through the orchard. Authorities arrived, and from the beginning, the scene raised more questions than it answered. There were no signs of a struggle in the surrounding area. The placement of the letters suggested they had been handled after the fact, and the positioning of the bodies did not match what would typically be expected in a sudden shooting. Very early on, suspicion turned toward Hall's wife, Frances Stevens Hall, and her brothers, Henry and Willie Stevens. The reasoning was simple. Motive. If Hall's relationship with Mills had become known, or was about to, there would have been personal, social, and reputational consequences. Frances Hall denied any involvement. So did her brothers. But the case did not settle. Witnesses began to come forward, though their accounts were inconsistent. Some claimed to have seen figures near the orchard that night. Others described hearing voices. None of the testimonies aligned cleanly. And then there were the letters. They confirmed the relationship between Hall and Mills, but they also complicated the narrative. They made it clear that whatever existed between them was not casual. It had history, emotion, intent, which made the question of who killed them feel less like an isolated act and more like something tied to everything surrounding them. The investigation stretched on. Evidence was questioned. Witnesses contradicted themselves. Details shifted depending on who was speaking. Eventually, the case went to trial. Frances Hall and her brothers were formally charged. The trial itself became a spectacle. Reporters filled the courtroom. The public followed every development. The story had already taken hold. Part scandal, part mystery, but inside the courtroom, the foundation was unstable. Witness testimony changed. Some accounts were discredited entirely. Physical evidence was limited and in some cases mishandled. The prosecution attempted to build a case based on motive and circumstance. The defense dismantled it piece by piece. By the time it reached its conclusion, the jury returned a verdict. Not guilty. All defendants were acquitted. After the trial, no one else was successfully prosecuted for the murders. The case remained open, but without resolution. Over time, theories continued to circulate. Some believed it had been a crime of jealousy. Others suggested a broader conspiracy, something involving more people than were ever formally charged. There were also questions about the staging. Why arrange the bodies? Why leave the letters? Why make the scene visible in that particular way? None of those questions were answered in a way that held. What remains is a record that never fully settles. Two people met in private. They were found the next day, placed side by side in an orchard. And whatever happened between those moments was never clearly established. That was tonight's story. You've been listening to The Midnight Box. Wherever you are, thank you for listening. Good night.